So I mentioned in my last video a little theory that I've had for quite a while actually. It's a theoretical framework, to be honest, and it'll probably be quite boring in its true form, sadly. It's kind of like listening to Tildeer talk about all the insanity that is social justice in academia. But allow me to give you the abridged version, if you will. So think of it this way. In evolution, what do we see? We see one species going to another through a process of slight and gradual changes. For example, field mice in certain area, their hair grows brown because the dirt is ground, so the birds don't kill them. Whereas some mice grow white or go albino because they're in a place that's dark, so they contrast, so you can't see them. Things like that. The things adapt to their environment, essentially. So what do you think happens when an artificial environment is introduced to a species? Well, they too adapt to that environment or they all die. So here's another thought. What happens when a rapid change in environments occurs within any species? Well, they've tested this too by taking like field mice that had the brown fur that matched the dirt, and they put them in a different environment within like 10 generations or so, I think it was. Their fur changes to an alternate color just to match because they breed and die so damn fast that's what happens. So they adapt. When it's a drastic change, they're forced to adapt or everything dies. The bigger the animal, the larger they are, the more likely they are to just die off the face of the planet. So when you change things, that's how it works. So think about it this way. Organizations, the big bitches, the giant Goliath companies, such as, what was that? East India Trading Company, for example, or the British one. I think that was actually the British one. There was a few others that used to do shady shit, like sell opium and use it as a tea company to ship shit across the channels and whatnot. And that's how they got opium all throughout the Asian empire, if you will. Do they really exist anymore, or are they a shell of their former selves? What changed and what had a dramatic effect? So, the best example that I can give you that me and my colleagues came up with when we first introduced this theory was, well, let me give you the synopsis. I think that'll explain it most. I'm trying to explain it from top down. It's not working very well. Let's look at it this way. An organization functions in the same way that people function and everything else functions along an evolutionary path. It has no choice because it is an invention of an evolutionary species. Humans. We create organizations, essentially. They are a abstract, if you will. They are a thought. They're a group meet. They're a group think. They're very tribal. They're very social. And they function around group identity. So individuals within organizations tend to not do as well as somebody that does groupthink. Now, keeping along with that, go with the example. When radical innovation happens within an organization, it needs to either adapt, or the industry rather, needs to adapt or die. This whole paradigm, if you will, of an industry is the prime example of things, of the ecology within an organization. And if you don't adapt within that ecology, you're going to go bankrupt. You're going to fail. You're going to go under. You're going to do all a bunch of other shit. Or you're going to do some shady shit to try to survive. But it's basically like the death throes of an organization. Case in point, something that all the internet plebs will probably be familiar with is Napster. Napster induced, god damn, my English is horrible. Napster induced a change. They introduced a new technology that was the peer-to-peer file sharing of music. They did it small at the time, and you basically get a torrent, is what it was called back then. I believe some places still do torrents, which is pretty nifty. Those that know about the not the intellectual dark web, but as they put it on the idiot shows for plebs, the dark web. I found it on the dark web. Really, it's like Merc channels or some shit. Or Pirate Bay, stuff like that. They still do torrents. Well, this technology spawned something interesting. Napster used to file share music. That was their thing. You could get a single track of a hit song that you really liked straight from somebody else that happened to rip it off a CD, turn it to MP3, and just share it to literally everyone, because why not? Well, Napster got sued. By who? A couple music labels and Lars Ulrich from Metallica, because he's a dick. Well, that lawsuit was in direct opposition to the paradigm. Like, the paradigm originally was you buy the album because we put it out there regardless of the shit that's on this album. You're going to like this song. You're going to like this music or whatever. So they push it out there, right? And then Napster gets sued because they're like, no, we're going to change the paradigm. Nobody likes the other 3 trash or 4 trash songs you put on a 13-song album. Only like 5 of them actually got your top 100 Billboard chart music award thingies. Only 5 were really worth listening to. The other 6 to 10 are garbage, right? Well, after the lawsuit, what happened? Another organization saw the paradigm shift, saw that people really, really liked and wanted this technology, and Old Guard shut it down hard. They shut it down through lawsuits, through copyright infringement, through all sorts of other shit. And they refused to adapt. They were like, no, you're going to buy the album. You have to go and buy this CD. Sucks to be you. This physical media has a large investment, because they were making a shit ton of money off of this, right? Well, in comes in iTunes and Apple with a contractual license to say, we will be a record reseller, if you will. But we're not going to do it the way the regular people do. No, you're going to be like $1 to $2 a song. We'll allow you to put a price tag per song on your music, but we're not going to sell the full album. If people want to buy the full album, we'll charge the full album price, but people can pick and choose a single song off of that album and just buy that. Not only that, we're going to make all this music downloadable to a device that we developed called the was it the iPad? Yeah, it was the iPad. If you remember those little beasts. I mean, that's old technology by today's standards, because everything goes to your phone. This is just before the iPhone, mind you. So iPad, iTunes, and iPad, right? I'm not crazy? iPod. Oh, that's right. It was not iPad, it was iPod. My bad. I get them all mixed up because I really hate Apple in general. But anyways, so they made up the iPod. And the iPod was basically a portable device that you could play music on, similar to the way the Walkman and the CD Man were. But this is new technology. All because, let me finish up. So Apple developed this, and then the knockoffs started happening. All these other MP3 players come out of the woodworks, where you could use iTunes to download your favorite songs. You could use another Apple or another program that would equally sell these songs across MP3s, or you could use your pirated music. A couple of apps were out there all of a sudden where you could download these apps to take your music and turn it to MP3 format. In fact, Microsoft's Media Player used to be able to, I think it actually still does, where you can rip it to MP3 and then just throw it onto a player, and there you go, right? Well, that entire rapid shift came from disruptive innovation in the form of new file transfer. That's really what it was. It's where it started. Just new innovation. File transfer forced an entire paradigm to shift. Now look at the record labels. They ain't doing so hot. Who's doing really well? iTunes. Who else is doing real well? Independent, single, decentralized music performers. Now more people than ever can be discovered and sell their music, get it popular across the iTunes verse, even get on radios without having to go through record labels. Now, what is the record labels become from then on out? Basically promoters. They set up the tours. They set up the music venues. They set up all that other shit where these people that have bigger labels and probably have people write their songs for them can go out and get bigger that way. So it's a gateway. The independent people can just make music because they like to make it. If you want to get big, you sign with a label. They get you bigger because they have the promotional and the backing and the money to get you bigger. But the labels had to adapt. If they didn't adapt, they went under. A lot of new labels came out of this shit. It wasn't the old guard just didn't stick around. A couple of them changed. The older ones went under. They pretty much died, and the new ones spawned from that. And in fact, some of the bands and whatnot that saw this coming, they adapted too, made their own labels, and just promoted their own shit that way. And then when they wanted to do a concert, they'd set up the tours and all that. They get a promoter and all that stuff to do it in each location, and they work independently. So decentralize that entire market. So what it looks like is you get new innovation, so a rapid change in the ecology, in the environment of what things existing. The wheels are churning. They stay stagnant. Something radical happens, forces an evolutionary shift. And these don't it changed over a gradual point in time, maybe 5 to 10 years, to where we're at right now. But that shift was a radical shift. A lot of things died off. A lot of people lost money. A lot of organizations had to change and adapt or die. So why do I bring this up? Well, in my previous video, I was talking about how the media is trying to slander people, how you see basically a massive amount of bullshit happening at this point, and they're propaganda outlets. They want to be the gatekeepers of information, right? That's how I put it. Well, they are the old guard. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, ABC, all the alphabet soup of the cable news, I guess you can call them. I mean, that's the old legacy media. That's what they are. They're legacy. They are going to go extinct. Why? Because New Guard has stepped in, caused a radical innovative shift, and forced them to adapt. Case in point, the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro. It's okay. I get annoyed with his voice, to be honest, and I don't agree with him half of the time, I guess. He makes some logical sense, but then when he goes ultra conservative, I'm like, you're an idiot. And then when he starts talking about religion, all I hear is the same arguable, just garbage arguments that have been around since the dawn of time to justify believing in a make-believe guy. Steven Crowder. He's in a legal battle right now with Vox because some jerkface at Vox is like, oh, these people made a hate mob and tried to harass me and dox me. And oh my God, there's a hate piece. Yeah. And what you guys do is any different by going directly to people's sources of income and getting them destroyed? Now, remember in my previous example, Napster got sued the fuck out of existence by the old guard. This is a new radical shift in the way people consume news and media. This radical shift comes from independent, decentralized concept of individual creators. Tim Pool, Steve Crowder, Nick Monroe. There's a few others that are out there that use different various platforms and ways to deliver. Even on the left side, I mean, Vox is trying to adapt to this, for example, and a few others, but they get yeeted off the internet for basically putting out false information. And the reason why they do that is because they're used to being the old guard gatekeepers of information. So when people now have the ability on their own to check knowledge, check facts, check information, and find out, wow, these people have been lying to us, we in turn reject that. Now, here's the unfortunate problem with this. YouTube, being the main platform where people put this on there, wants to align with the old guard because that's where the big money is. They don't want to decentralize. They don't want to go to independent creators because it's not equitable. They won't make money. Literally, we've had, 2 or 3 YouTube purges of major capital because some of the old guard bitched, and so they went straight to the advertisers showing them, oh, look what's on there. You don't see this on our place. Do you see it on this place? Yes, you do. Oh, they're really, really, really bad. You should stop spending money at this location. Unfortunately, Susan Wojcicki is a fucking moron as well when it comes to this. She doesn't realize that she is at the forefront of the most disruptive, innovative technology they have seen in this paradigm. The news media thinks they can maintain control through intimidation. They're trying to use bully tactics, essentially. They want to be the gatekeepers. They want to keep control of this information in the news. Well, New Guard says no. So they're getting their income attacked. So what happens? Independent creators get innovative. They start selling their own merch. They start making their own monetization streams, and so on and so forth, trying to make their own living. So what does the old guard do? Once again, attack the one thing that will put these people under and keep control for themselves, and that's the income. This shift will continue for quite a while, unfortunately. However, you're starting to see the light again at the end of the tunnel. You find other companies that are not willing to bend the knee to this corporate bullying because they too see this radical innovation, and they prize and hopefully support the same principal value of free speech that other people have decided to support. Because of the decentralized nature of this particular paradigm that goes pretty deep, and they've run this show for how long? Since TV. So 50 years? 60 years? God, who knows how long? They've been around for a very long time, right? And they've been running this show for quite a while. Once they've obtained, and they're like, think of it in an evolutionary terms like this. So the old guard, as I'm referring to it, is the alpha animal within the pack, within the paradigm. They're about to get yeeted off their throne because they've grown so old and refuse to adapt. Radical innovation has occurred. You've seen them try to adapt, and they've tried to force YouTube to make them adapt, but they're not getting the same traffic channel and revenue or even views, I would say, unless they do something so incredibly stupid that it drags everyone's attention. So them being morons actually drags their attention. But I would argue what you should do in those cases is stop giving them the views and go to the alternate sources that will just report on them being morons at that point. But essentially, that's how this model works. So it's an evolutionary model where you can look at a paradigm, look at a market, an industry, and say, you can identify these four quadrants. Who's the old guard? Who's the alpha? Who's the radical innovation, the first front runners, the forerunners of this new shift? And we can identify those because they're the biggest right now, and they've established themselves within the guidelines that everyone must play. So within the ecology that's shifted, they've capitalized on this ecology. The old guard will then either try to maintain credibility and responsibility or die. Along with it, cable news will die because it'll be decentralized and go straight to the internet once people stop getting TV in their house. But unfortunately, cable has doubled. They'll double their cable broadcasting along with the internet. I would argue that shift needs to occur where the cable people need to just stop providing cable and go internet only and cheaper. You'd see a drastic drop in cable news because no one's going to watch it. Because why? Nobody watches that anymore. Everybody streams Netflix. Everybody streams pretty much everything. We don't need to watch cable news. The only thing you'd watch it for at that point is local news. What's going on in my neighborhood? What's the weather going to be like? That type of stuff. That's all that's left for these guys, and those are over airwaves. Then what you might see is an adaptation to local airwaves, where the same broadcast for YouTube, for podcasts, and all that fun stuff gets rebroadcasted and redistributed over the airwaves in local areas, kind of like AM talk radio was for the FM garbage that's all over the airwaves. They were the alternative at that point. And you'll see an adaptation, or these old guards will die. So right now what you're seeing is the same kind of step that we saw with Napster and the old guard labels and a couple bands like Metallica, where they sued the shit out of Napster and they went and died. Well, YouTube is Napster. There's a potential for YouTube to die because it can't afford to keep going the way it is right now. And that's pretty obvious considering how many, was it millions? 80 million or 80 billion that they lost? And the revenue lost in the ABC, what was it? Actually, ironically, they're called Alphabet Inc. And their direct competitor is cable news, which is amazing. And they just don't even realize it. They don't realize that they're competing against cable news instead of they're capitulating to cable news. It's great shit. And that is why YouTube will die. They don't realize that they are that innovative platform. This is why Susan is such a shitty CEO, because she cannot see the same thing that a Steve Jobs saw. Here's an opportunity for innovation and capitalization on the market, putting the cable news and kicking their ass to the curb. I would start making deals and negotiations with cable news to provide a streaming service for news for independent conglomerates. There's one solution right there, where I stream cables, news people, slice up the shows or whatever, and put them on cable news in direct competition with the rest of them, but at a lower rate, cheaper. Don't subscribe to the core packages. Here's the independent media news channel, filled with all sorts of people. The only problem is that some of them would have to change their formatting. You couldn't do the 10, 20-minute videos anymore because some people actually listen to the news in long form. There would all these channel exports and shit like that. I mean, you'd still be able to do a little bit different things. So some of them format might change, but that's what people want. That's where the paradigm is going. It's just unfortunate that the platform that is hosting this the most doesn't realize it. There's an opportunity for capitalization here. Unfortunately, I don't have the funds nor the knowledge to be able to make something like this happen. But if anybody wants some help in making something brilliant occur, I'd be more than willing to throw some consulting in, I guess, because this is a model that I'm very familiar with. I thought it up along with 3 or 4 of my cohorts back in the day when I was working on my doctorates. So that's all I got for right now. We call this the paradigm shifting model for now. I was thinking about calling it like the evolutionary response to, some long-winded, multi-syllable name that you usually see at the title of some freaking scholarly article that just makes no sense to literally everyone else. It will get published eventually. I have most of it written up. I just haven't pushed it for publishing yet. And I think people will enjoy this. I mean, it happens frequently. It happens throughout our entire history. Once radical innovation happens, shit changes. The old guard struggles, they bitch, they complain, and then they die because they refuse to adapt. In the virtual ecology, the shit that we made up ourselves, now that we pulled ourselves out of humans have pulled themselves out of the ecology that is nature and made up our own ecology, does not mean that evolution and entropy still don't happen. So now that radical innovation is the reason we see an evolutionary shift, well, that's our ecology changing. We need to adapt as an organization or die. And that's all I got for this video. I hope you enjoyed that little analogy. I did say I was going to explain it a little bit further, but, the weekend was crazy. So, yeah, thanks.